Joe Mixon is one of the Bengals' biggest cap hits in 2023, but he was outsnapped by Samaje Perine in the AFC Championship game. Let's talk about that, plus some projected contracts for the Bengals' biggest free agents.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you coverage of your team every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, hit the follow button so we're delivered to your devices when we upload our content every day, and make us your first listen because all the cool kids do it. Be part of the club. Joe Mixon, James, was outsnapped by Samaje Perine in the AFC Championship game. And in the wild card round, which we didn't talk about, or we didn't talk about as much anyway at the time. He has one of the larger cap hits for the Cincinnati Bengals in 2023, coming in at $12.79 million against the cap. Samaje Perine not under contract, of course, next year. Let me ask you a question, James. What was Joe Mixon better at than Samaje Perine this year? And I think there is an answer to this question, but let's start there.
He was more explosive, right? He had some bigger plays, but it wasn't like he had an 80-yard touchdown run that we remember or a 72-yard reception for a touchdown. But he had his games, had his moments, was really good, I thought, in the divisional round against the Bills, was really good, obviously, against the Panthers. So there were games when he had that burst, that explosion that you need to see from Joe Mixon. You need to see from someone that has a $12 million cap hit. But liability and pass protection, certainly compared to Samaje Perine. Trust-wise, it's not even close. And that's why when you're passing it as much as they did in the AFC Championship game, that Perine outsnaps him as much as anything. It's the ability to protect Joe Burrow. Mm-hmm. I think that from a value standpoint, if this is the way their offense is constructed, if this is what they're going to do on offense, Jake, I don't know how you look at it. Even though he's a great leader, I still think he's got some tread left. I don't think he's just washed up and done. But the way they're constructed, given what they need to do elsewhere, is it worth the resources to keep Mixon around? I think that's a very real conversation that this Bengals front office and coaching staff needs to have.
This is a pass-first offense.
And pass-second offense.
A lot of the time it is. I mean,
the
way they use their screen game, their quick game to be an extension of the running game. There are games where they're hardly running the ball at all, and they're still effective on offense. And they did get to be efficient in the ground game this year. But you're right. Joe Mixon was more explosive than Samaje Perine. He had, more carries, obviously, than did Samaje Perine. 250 to Perine's 109. So about 140 more carries. And he had 21 rushes this year for 10 or more yards. And Samaje Perine had 6. So Perine was the Mike Allstott. You need 4, he'll get you. Well, it's 3 is the saying. You need 3, he'll get you 3. You need 5, he'll get you 3. But Samaje was the guy that was consistently efficient, positive runs, very few runs getting stuffed, was better at creating yards after contact on average this year than Joe Mixon was, like you mentioned, the much better pass blocker. So even if we've established that Joe Mixon is a better runner than Samaje Perine, which he is, more explosive, bigger, can do more as a runner.
I agree with you. He isn't as physical though, which is wild to say because you would look
never
at someone
played that way. Yeah,
never. And you would look at someone like Mixon and think, man, tough to tackle. But it's more tough to tackle because he's got wiggle for his size more so than he's going to run you over.
And sometimes he'll seek out contact and then just go down, which has been something we've talked about with Mixon for a while too. None of this is to say that Joe Mixon is a bad player, right? No. Just to be abundantly clear about that. Joe Mixon has been an important part of this football team for his entire career. But if his cap hit is nearly $13 million in 2023, and Samaje Perine's cap hit might be, say, $4 million. Is Joe Mixon? You can't pay both. I think. I don't think you can put $18 million or so, with all the RB3, RB4 into the running back position. I think that's too much for a pass first team, especially when that 13 million cap hit isn't on the field a bunch. Is he worth $8 million more against the cap than Samaje Perine and the replacement for Joe Mixon? That's the question.
That is. It's the question. And much like anytime we have these conversations, all right, so what is the plan? If it's not Joe, where's that money going? Is that the difference between getting that pass rusher that can make a difference? Is that the difference between keeping Tyler Boyd for another season or not? Is that the difference between adding another quality offensive lineman, say a left guard or a right tackle? Not saying that they would do that in free agency, but maybe it's one of these versatile pieces that is sort of like a Ted Karras type, right? Where he could play multiple spots, isn't going to get a huge deal in free agency, but can come in and be a stabilizing presence if you need it, especially early on with a question at right tackle. Yeah, I think all of those things are more valuable than what Mixon would bring for that money. And that's the part. It sucks because I like Joe Mixon. I think he's great to have in the locker room. I think that having him on the team is awesome, but the numbers, it's really hard to make the argument. Oh my goodness, you definitely need him around. He's definitely in sync with Joe Burrow. He can protect him. He can do all of these things. He's this red zone threat. He's an explosive runner. Actually, he feels replaceable. And even if you're only getting 80 or 85% of what Mixon gave, well, you're probably getting more than that because the Bengals don't bank on running backs to ball out. That's just not what they're looking for. They're looking for reliable pass protectors that can go get the 5 yards when there's 5 yards there. And if they have that efficiency, that's it. Their offense is going to be fine. So it's really hard without restructuring. And maybe that's it. Maybe Mixon says, no, don't cut me. I want to stay here. Let's rework my deal. But is it because he's going to take a pay cut wherever he goes? It's not like he's going to get that contract again. So maybe that's the route you go.
And he has said very clearly that he wants to stay in Cincinnati, but is he the direction you want to go? So if you accept the premise that he's a better rusher than Samaje Perine is a better pass protector and still a viable runner of the football, do you look for speed? This is something we've talked about with this offense, right? What do we think they could add to this offense? Maybe that's the direction they go. There's more tread to this conversation. And you mentioned right tackle. We'll see if we have time to talk about that. Just looking at some of the potential cap cuts here. La'el Collins coming off that injury, probably worth a look as well. More to talk about, though, with this running back position for the Bengals coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on team members that you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, experiences that help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to open jobs with targeting tools. Maybe the Bengals could use this as they target different pieces for their roster as they retool things. LinkedIn Jobs has over 875 member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. And LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
So part of this conversation, James, to me is about cap allocation. Can you use that money elsewhere? Does freeing up that money or reducing that cap hit somehow, some way allow you to bring back a guy like Von Bell, who we talked about yesterday in terms of, what the market might be? We've got some great projections from Brad Spielberger of PFF, who was really quite good at this last year that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Does it give you the funds for some of these free agents that you want to retain, or to go get a guy. So that's part of the conversation. The other part of the conversation is how does it fit the team and the way this offense needs to go? They got major contributions from their running backs in the passing game this year, more than they have in Joe Burrow's career so far. But could that have been better with a different kind of player catching those passes out of the backfield?
Yeah, I wonder. I certainly, and to me, there's always been a struggle there in the first couple of years, and you had Giovanni Bernard in 2020 early on with Burrow, and to me, that like prime Geo is what would make a ton of sense. Could you find prime Geo? And that's just not Mixon. Not to say Mixon doesn't work, and Pirine isn't perfect, right? But he's able to do what the offense needs from that position at the, at a replacement level value, a replacement value level or level value or whatever you want to call it. And Mixon is not that as a pass protector. Well, Gio would have been a heck of a pass protector and been exactly where you need him every single time and been able to catch out of the backfield. And yeah, he's small. He's not going to be a great between the tackles runner. Do the Bengals need a great between the tackles runner? No. They would be able to rely on a guy like Pirine. So I think an ideal backfield is like a Gio and a Pirine. And both guys can be interchangeable as pass blockers. And one guy can be between the tackles, but you can also throw it to him. And the other guy is certainly your pass catching back, but you could also hand it to him. And that sounds so simple, but the Bengals clearly don't love Joe Mixon as a pass protector, which we saw in Super Bowl 56, which we saw all season this year. And I think he is what he is at this point. If it hasn't gotten better, hasn't gotten reliable enough, then that is what he is.
There's also a world where you can't do better than Joe Mixon at running back. And then there's the conversation about, well, okay, maybe he is the right running back for our team, but maybe the financial bit is the start and end of the conversation. And that's
do you think they can't do better though? Let's just look at the guys they've drafted. Right? I mean, I think Hill worked. I think Giovanni Bernard worked. Joe Mixon worked. Like guys that they've drafted relatively high to like contribute.
I mean, Mixon's probably the most talented of all those guys.
No doubt. I mean, he would have been, without the off the field, he's a top 15 pick otherwise. I mean, he would have been high. I mean, he was high on their board, put it that way.
Right. Hasn't had quite the receiving impact that he had at Oklahoma until this year. I mean, this was his best receiving year from a volume perspective, from an efficiency perspective. So that part of his game did get better, but the protection issues have come up too many times, and the trust factor there is what's keeping him off the field. And that's what you look at. And you look at the cap number and you say, if you're going to pay a player this much money, the only cap hits bigger than Joe Mixon's or DJ Reader and Trey Hendrickson, who we would all agree are two integral parts of this defense. Is Joe Mixon that for the offense to justify that resource allocation?
Is Joe Mixon more valuable than Tyler Boyd?
Compared to like the replacement kind of player is what you have to think about, like the next guy off the bench. So this year it's Samaje Perine versus Trent Irwin. That argument makes itself.
Correct. Yeah. You'd much rather have Samaje Perine and get Boyd out there. No doubt. Right. And so that's the part is as easy as it is to find a receiver. And everyone will say that, oh, receivers are a dime a dozen.
Or running back.
But that's the part of it where it's like, well, the one position that might even be more of a dime a dozen. And this team has shown the ability to recognize talent and at running back. I mean, that's dating back a while now. Mm-hmm. It isn't just like Chris Evans hasn't worked, I think, as a pass protector. And that's why he's kind of fallen off a bit in the shed. Or the doghouse a little bit, the doghouse a little bit.
What's that outdoor structure?
But he's talented. Like, I don't deny his talent. And Travion Williams, sixth rounder, like solid sixth rounder, like that's fine. But they need something better. Like if you're moving on from Mixon, you're investing in running back earlier, whether it's signing someone in free agency for less, getting him to restructure, or drafting someone early I think I would be shocked if one of those three things doesn't happen. And by early, I mean first 4 rounds, I'll say.
Probably day 2. That seems to be where they like to. Day 2 or like late day 3. Those are the 2 places we've seen them address running back, right?
Yeah. They could trade. Who knows? Is where they're drafting. You could see them, much like last year, and we talked about trading down. I could see them trading down too. You just never know. But Gio was the 37th pick, I believe, to give you an idea.
So. Yeah, early second round is where Mixon, Hill, and Gio were, right?
Yep.
So there's their track record there recently. I think it's a tough conversation, man. Joe Mixon clearly like Energizer Bunny qualities in this locker room for the Bengals. Very well liked. Wants to be there.
Restructure, Joe.
And to be clear, we don't mean restructure as in take signing bonus and convert to salary or vice versa. It would be the other way. Take salary and convert to signing bonus to prorate it over the life of the deal. We mean renegotiate the deal, which
is
rare.
You have to take a pick. And he would. Like that's the part is so many of these players say, no, I'm not taking a pay cut. I'm not taking a pay cut. And then they just get cut. And I'm not saying that's going to happen with Mixon. I have no inside knowledge, but okay. So then you want to move and go elsewhere and be in a committee guaranteed. And you're going to make less than you probably would if you just stayed put and tried to renegotiate this deal to where it would be much more team friendly. How
would you handicap it? Do you think that they just keep him on it? Because like earlier this season, I would have said he's going to play 2023 on his current deal. And then 2024, there's no way to me that he would see the deal in 2024 that he signed. But in the middle of the season, we talked about it. I was like, yeah, Mixon's going to play on this deal next year. And then things seemed to kind of shift and Perine was getting more and more playing time.
I think if you ask them today, they would say he's back. And I think there's a pretty good chance that he might be back under this deal because it really depends on if they can get these extensions done, get their free agent targets, all of those things. And if that happens, right, let's say they agree to the guys they're targeting in free agency, and they're going to have to be active in free agency again. Let's just say that. And Burrow's extension's done, and they feel good about where T is. Well, then they're going to have to do something with Mixon. And maybe it's post June 1 to alleviate some of that cap, the cap issue. Maybe they just get it out of the way now. I could see it, but I also know how big of a role he is in the locker room. And I could also see them going the other way. But, Joe Mixon and Jeremy Hill were teammates. Everyone knew Jeremy Hill was done after 2017 with the Bengals. But guess what? He was their starter early on. They could easily draft a running back as the heir to the throne and have Mixon in there and go that route. Wouldn't shock me if they did.
Wasn't that Jeremy Hill's rookie deal still? They didn't extend him.
It was his rookie deal. Yeah, there's a reason to keep him around.
That's a bigger difference.
But he was a starter.
Yeah, but like $1 million cap hit versus.
Oh, for 13. Sure. I'm just saying they draft a year early a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like they have a running back in waiting.
No, they don't. This could, when we talk about the draft, we're going to be talking about running back, probably day 2 running back, probably a guy with speed, a guy who can play in the pass game, a guy who can bring that.
By the way, I agree with you. Speed.
Yeah.
Speed. Can you add some speed, man? I need some track stars.
It's something that we're going to talk about this offseason as well. Like, how do we recreate some of the explosion? How does this Bengals offense rediscover the explosion that was much reduced in 2023 versus 2020, or sorry, 2022 versus 2021? Lots to talk about, man. They have some tough decisions to make. We're not going to talk about the La'el Collins contract today, but we will do a fuller look at the salary cap at some point here, because I do think, I think I've said this a few times, despite them having the 4th most cap space in the NFL, when you take a deeper look at the cash they're going to spend in the cap space they're going to have to use this year, I think it does get a little bit nebulous and a little bit trickier to navigate than it may appear on paper because of the way they do different business. And so we'll see if that's going to be any different as well. But We've got some contract projections. Brad Spielberger from PFF was just spot on with this stuff last year, and he just put out his list of contract projections for the top 100 free agents over at PFF. And so just want to look at some of those numbers and see how they line up with what we talked about yesterday when we looked at the Bengals' biggest free agents. So we'll finish the show there next.
Today's show is brought to you by TurboTax. Go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do not taxes. Show your eyes things that are not taxes. Unpack a moving box of not taxes. Taste not taxes. Sing not taxes a lullaby. Hope not taxes sleeps through the night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring that your taxes are done right, guaranteed. So you can relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax, full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
Do you remember what the reported contract was that the Bengals offered Jesse Bates last year, James? Do you recall?
I don't. I assume it was in the $13 million range, but I'm not
13,
sure.
14, something like that.
Okay, like
annually. We'll start with the biggest projection from Brad Spielberger, who has Jesse Bates projected at 5 years, $75 million, $15 million a year, with $40 million guaranteed on that contract. You compare that to safety deals, and that does not quite crack the top 5 of currently scheduled safety deals on an average per year basis starting in 2023. But it's close. And I assume that's where the number comes from. But $40 million guaranteed would be one of the bigger guarantees. It would be the second biggest guarantee on all safety deals. So Brad very clearly taking into account David Mulligetta, the agent, on this one.
Yeah, I won't be shocked. He's going to get paid elsewhere. It's, I've resigned myself to the fact that that's the case, and that guaranteed money certainly is going to matter. And it's Dax Hill time when it comes to that Bengals free safety spot.
Yeah, I think when we're talking 75 million, you're talking 40 million guaranteed, you're talking 15 million a year. I think that is bigger than the Bengals would want to do. I don't think that this changes anything for me, but if that market doesn't materialize, well, we'll see. But I think it will. Von Bell, the next one we talked about. I said 7 to 8. You said if it's 10, no go. I agree. 10 would be too much. Brad has it projected at 3 years, 22 million. That's 7.3 a year. And that's the kind of deal that I was thinking when I was like, yeah, I think Von Bell will be back. And that was the kind of deal I was thinking about.
If he's willing to accept something like that pre-free agency, I think it might get done. I maybe he wants to become a free agent again. Maybe not. Maybe he says, screw this. I love it here. We'll see if Lou's back, but I love this team, because that to me is reasonable. And if he signs elsewhere for that, it's going to be like, well, wouldn't it be nice to have some consistency in that room and consistency in the secondary, where it looks like there's going to be some new faces, certainly. And we already mentioned Jesse. So, and we talked about the snaps on Thursday's show. You're replacing a lot of snaps on defense if you lose Eli and you lose Jesse and you lose Vaughn. It'd be nice to keep at least one of them. And obviously Vaughn, if you could get him for multiple years, that'd be nice, especially turning to Dax, who's only in the second year of his rookie deal. And that's the other part of this. You have a guy on a rookie deal, so you could spend on that other spot, and it's not like you're spending on both. The reason you're able to get Vaughn partially is because you had Bates on a rookie deal, and it helped. Well, now you could kind of flip it, and you have another guy on a rookie deal, and you could keep Vaughn around for a few more years through the rest of his prime.
And it's a fifth-year option rookie deal. Fifth-year option eligible rookie deal.
Yep.
So they do have the extra year of control.
And a 3-year deal would, by the time that 5th-year option kicks in, then Von Bell wouldn't be under contract. So from a position allocation, from a resources standpoint, you'd feel pretty good.
Yeah. I think that number makes sense to me. That's what contributed to my perspective on Von Bell being back yesterday when we talked about it, and why he feels like the most likely guy on that defensive side of the ball. Jermaine Pratt, the next one here, 3 years, $24.75 million. That's $8.25 million a year. That number doesn't change anything for me. I think it is a reasonable number for Jermaine Pratt, given the way he played this year, given the way that he's improved year over year, and the fact that he's still very much in his prime. I just think that they're going to pay Logan Wilson, and they're not going to pay 2 linebackers.
Yeah, I've seen some say, "Oh, we'll let Pratt walk and go get this free agent guy or that free agent guy." I don't think that's the case at all. I think they're going to pay Logan and maybe try to extend him this offseason if they can, and that's it. Then that other spot is going to be Akeem Davis-Gaither, Marcus Bailey, maybe another rookie.
Could be a rookie.
You draft for 2024 worst case, right? Or a rookie splits time, and that's probably the likelihood of what happens at that spot if I had to guess.
And they will lose something there without Jermaine Pratt if he is indeed not back. There's some things that he did that they don't necessarily directly have a replacement for on the roster right now, and it took them time to develop that skill set with Pratt. It took him time to develop that skill set for himself. So that one will, of course, bear watching in terms of the replacement. Last one here, totally prices Hayden Hurst out of the market for me.
Ooh, say it. Say the number.
$9.5 million a year for 28.5 over 3 years for Hayden Hurst to
get your money, Hercules.
Bet on himself.
It. Ooh-wee.
And Brad thinks that bet on himself pays off. I mean, look at tight end deals from last year. And you can see why this sort of number might make sense. I mean, Austin Hooper is projected at $8.5 million a year. Have you heard anything from Austin Hooper lately?
No, I mean, that's crazy to me too. But I mean, I had to look the numbers up and I know he missed a little time, but 52 receptions, 414 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, really?
Tight end is scarce in the NFL right now. I mean, Foster Moreau, who I thought would have been a budget option, is projected here at $9 million a year. I think that tight ends are just getting paid. I think that's what this reflects. And you think about last year, you think about those tight end deals last year, and we saw guys like CJ Uzomah. But
Uzomah had more touchdowns, had more yards last year than Hurst.
And Tyler Conklin. I mean, it wasn't that different though. And CJ got $8 million a year. And the cap is bigger.
But that's different than.
So you grow it 10%, because the cap has gone up 10% and 8.8.
Yeah,
that's pretty close.
All right, rookie tight end at 29 then.
Maybe. Which,
by the way, it is an option. I'm not saying it's the first option. I certainly think that there are other needs ahead of it, but you could certainly see a scenario. I know I could, where tight end is in play on draft night, round 1.
And it's possible that Brad's a little bit high on these tight ends, on the tight end market in general, but we'll see, right? Like last year, I would have been surprised to hear that a guy like Uzomah would be $8 million. Tyler Conklin would be $7 million a year. Some of these deals are, Gerald Everett, $6 million a year. Mo Alley Cox, $6 million a year. It's just maybe the nature of the position in the NFL being somewhat scarce.
Well, yeah, I agree, but it was a weak draft, and I think it's a better draft now, and there are actually guys worth taking early at tight end, and
it is a strong tight end draft.
Yeah, so that part should impact it some. So maybe the market is just hard to predict, and if not, fine, draft 2 of them, and draft 1 early, draft 1 late, go that route if you need to.
I do like the idea of adding athletic tight ends.
Speed. Explosion.
You're going to hear a theme on this this podcast this offseason.
Yeah, man.
And we're talking about speed, guys to add on offense.
Trying to run.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Plenty of other offseason.
Barry Allen. You need to be in stripes. Go ahead, Jake.
Who? The Flash?
Leave it there.
All right. We're going after comic book characters now. We'll be back.
Allen.
We'll be back in the near future as we continue to shift our focus to the Bengals offseason. Joe Burrow contract extension, T. Higgins contract extension, Logan Wilson contract extension, La'el Collins future.
You think Oliver Queen is fast?
James, come on. You got to get out of here. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.